being able to make passive income that would pay certain bills, right? And in order to do that, I had to have a list.
Hello, hello, hello. It's Holly Rustick here with Grant Writing and Funding. I'm super excited to help you grow capacity, increase funding, and to advance mission. That might be the mission of the nonprofit you're working at, or if you're a nonprofit consultant, the many different missions that you work with. To help me with that this week, I have Mandy Pearce from Funding for Good. Hi, Mandy. How you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you back on the show. You've been on the show before, but it's been a while. So it's great to have you back on, and we're going to hear about nonprofit consultancy stuff today. So super, I can't wait to hear about it.
Yay. Yeah, I'm happy and excited. I know we get opportunities to collaborate a little bit in this world, so it's always fun to talk about it.
Yeah, and speaking of collaborating, we do have our nonprofit consulting conference coming up, and that's August 23rd and 24th of 2023. We're really excited about it. This is our second year rolling, and just all of the great stuff we got from last year, we're like, we got to do this again. We got so much good feedback. The speakers were amazing. The sessions were great. So it's so great to see all the networking that's still taking place from that conference nearly a year ago.
Yep, it is. Excited to, like you said, really, we asked a lot of questions at the conference and after the conference, and have tailored this year's conference on how to know when to grow. So it's really about capacity building within either your idea of starting your nonprofit consulting company or the one you already have established, taking it to the next level. And as you and I both know, we've been in those places, we've been in those shoes, and we're still there and growing. And it's going to be exciting to talk to people and help them get their business to the next level.
That's right. And it's wonderful. I love the theme too, because so many people were coming in the door, they established a business, but they're just kind of on that cusp, right? That first 1 to 3 years to be like, okay, where's the next move? What do I do next? So, this is a great level at just, if you're coming in, not knowing how to grow and just starting, or you've been seasoned for a while. And as we know, businesses continually evolve. So it's always like, where's that next movement, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've had several growth steps this year that we've had to sit down and say, how do we want to grow? Do we want to grow? In what direction? How are we going to put systems in place for these things that are coming up? And it's been great. So it gives me a lot more information to share with other people.
I love it. I love it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So know when, and how to grow your consultancy business. And I get asked this a lot from a lot of the people in the grant professional mentorship, and people just coming in the door to be like, okay, when do I hire my first VA, right? When do I start doing something like on QuickBooks? Or when do I start, it's just even, how do I set up my systems? When am I ready for my systems? When can I grow a little bit? Maybe it's my staff, or maybe it's my software. So there's a lot of questions that go into that, because a lot of times there's also a monetary price tag attached to knowing when to grow as well. So sometimes, not always, but sometimes. So can you kind of talk about, just to familiarize our audience a little bit with your company? You've been now around for a long time, so you can just give us a little history on your consultancy and some of the steps you're taking this year.
Yeah, so when we first started, it was all about grants. That's what we did for a long time. It was everything grant writing, everything research and templates, and helping people set up their systems, and writing grants for people, and learning the federal grants process, and all of that. And over the course of time, we really moved into more foundational development work. So we did everything from fundraising and capital campaigns to, then we got more into coaching development teams and training staff and executive searches, and helping people find executive directors and development directors. And then we got into board development and staff leadership development. And then we landed on strategic planning. And that's really kind of where we hung up a big part of our hat for the past 4 years. And it's what we've decided that we really like, because it allows us to work with the foundation of everything else the organization needs to do going forward, instead of trying to write grants and wishing they had a strategic plan that was really solid, so it was easier to secure the funds, or any of the other number of things we used to do. And then a couple of years ago, as you know, we started really getting questions from consultants or people in the nonprofit world that said, I think I want to go out on my own, or I think I want to have a business, or I think I want to take my expertise and work with other people. And so I found my passion for working with consultants to either start or grow their consulting businesses, because, we took ours from $30,000 a year as a part-time side hustle to $500,000 in the most recent fiscal year. And we haven't really grown our personal team of workers, right? We've grown our support system and our support team, and we do have a lot of staff behind the scenes that are doing web development and content creation, and we have accountants and we have all those things, virtual assistants and whatnot, but the actual team is really mostly me and Marie. And so it's been a really interesting journey to see where we've gotten to as a company without taking some steps that a lot of people want to take. Like, I don't want to manage people. I don't want to have a big staff. I don't want to have staff. Marie's contractor, I'm an employee, and we're happy with that. Some people want to have a whole team, and they like collaboration, and they want an office environment, and they want to feed off other people, and they love working on project teams, and people thrive on that. And so it's always interesting. Everybody comes at it from a very different perspective on the type of business structure they want. And so this year, we've done a little bit of exploration into the world of government contracting, and so talk more about that at some point in the future. But it gets us to a different level of capacity as an organization, because you might make more revenue, but you don't have the same amount of time to take on other clients. And so you have to sort of balance, where do you want to spend your time, and how do you want to bring your revenue in, and what makes you happy. And those are some of the capacity building conversations that we've been having this year.
I love that. And I love that you have, and I've met a lot of grant writers too. The same thing, like started off writing grants because, maybe it wasn't even their passion, but it was just something they were good at. And they realized they can make a side hustle or a business out of this. And then as they progress and take on new clients, they realize, you know what, half of y'all don't even need grant writing at this point in time. You actually need other services. So is that kind of where you talked about exploring a lot of different services? Is it based on what people came and asked you for, instead of you kind of saying, oh, I think this is what they need? Or is it what people were asking you for? So you said, okay, we'll do this for a while and see if we like it. Is it, No,
I was always a development director. Marie was always an executive director and a program director. So we brought two different hats to the table for all of our clients, which was great. And most of the time we saw that people didn't need grant writers long-term. They needed a process. They might need templates or to understand how to write them effectively. But most people didn't really need or couldn't afford a grant writer full-time, and we didn't want to be somebody's full-time grant writer. And what we did identify as the things that really helped support fundraising of any type were the foundational pieces that we're doing now. Because pretty much consultants always have a job, because the nonprofit business structure is train some people and have turnover. Train some people again and have some more turnover, and train a few more people and have turnover. Whether you're talking about the staff, or you're talking about the board, or you're talking about other volunteers, it seems to be the same across the board. Yeah, you have organizations that do have volunteers that stay longer, or staff that stay longer, or boards that, renew their terms a few more times. But ultimately that process happens over and over and over, and you're always needing to retrain people, to write new strategic plans, to have new onboarding processes, to leadership development constantly happens. And so, we kind of felt like there was some job security there. And we have not found that to be untrue yet.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you're looking at it from such a strategic level. Of course, you do strategic planning, you have that strategic brain. So I absolutely love it. And that's one thing I'm always telling nonprofits to do, as well as strategic planning and consultants, right? You need to do your strategic planning to really figure out your structure, what you're going to do, what your goals are, all of that. Because if you don't have that, you just kind of go in with like, oh, I can make some money, or I could do this thing, or I can help my community. It's going to be, you're going to suffer, right? So I love that bird's eye view of where you guys have really settled in and said, hey, we really love it. And it was part of that too, where you're like, we really love to do this. It's time efficient. It's job secure. Like, what was some of the real big deciding factors on that?
I think for me, Marie's passion is facilitation, so she loves that. I prefer education and presenting in general, which is not facilitation. But there were a couple of reasons. We were excellent at grant writing. It's just not the thing I love to do, right? And so it was like, you can do it and you can get paid for it, but it doesn't bring me much joy. Yeah, it makes me happy to see our clients bring in dollars, and that's always wonderful and rewarding. But at the same time, like, I did not enjoy just writing grants all the time. And there was a limited capacity to how many clients we could take and how much we could make grant writing.
Right.
I mean, now if I wanted to have a bunch of contract grant writers working for me and managing those processes and doing that, yes, we could definitely make more money. But then those people have to follow your process and you have to review their work and you have to manage the relationship with the client.
Yep.
For me, that was not where I wanted to spend my time and my energy.
Yeah.
So, and there's always deadlines and it's very stressful. So for me anyway, and for strategic planning, it's a little bit more, we're scheduling the work with the clients and it's not someone else giving us this has to be done by this day. You know, it's more of a collaboration to see what's your schedule. When does this work for you? Yes, we can be there then, that kind of thing. And we're doing work together as opposed to someone saying, here's this thing, write it for us. So yeah, I still see a lot of value in grant writing and a lot of people really need that support. So for organizations that do it and do it well, I think it's needed a lot of the time because a lot of people can't afford a full-time grant writer and a lot of development directors don't have the skill. It's a unicorn when you have a development director who's also an excellent grant writer. And a lot of people assume they are one and the same. They are not. And so I think a lot of people need to understand the skill, how to set up their systems and what goes into a great grant. And once they have the understanding of a template, possibly they could do it again. But there's this other thing that's called outsourcing that we talk about a lot. It's like, I know how to mow my grass, right? We have mowers. My husband has a lawn care business. I know how to do that. But if I wanted to have an extra hour in my week during the summer, I could outsource that. I know how to manage the person doing it to say you're doing a good job or you're not, you trimmed this or you didn't. And it would be worth it for me to say, I could do it, but there's these other things like walking my dogs and cooking our dinner that I'd rather be doing. And so it's the same with this kind of thing in the nonprofit world. There's a lot of people out there who know how to do it. And they're like, I'd rather be building relationships with major donors. I'm going to outsource this thing.
Right.
And I encourage people to do that too. If you have the resources and you feel like that's the thing that you can outsource because you know how to do it and you can manage the person doing the work, knock it out. I think that's awesome. Build up your capacity as an organization so you can do that.
I love that. I really love that you bring back to say, there's part of me, I was really great at doing that, but looking at these other elements of like what I really love to do though, versus what I'm only great at, right? So it's really important to think about that because as a consultant, you can create your own world, really, right? Your own reality and what brings you joy. So if you're sitting there going, I'm going to quit my job because I don't love it, I'm going to open my own business, but then you start doing work that you don't actually like, it doesn't make any sense, right? So, and sure, sometimes you might have to do something you don't like because it brings in money. Like there's a part of that that's true, but overall, it doesn't have to be the main part of your business. You can, create those ways to bring in other funding. And I resonate with you on the management thing. And that was one thing too, is I started at one point to build up a team of grant writers. And I realized very quickly, I do not like managing people. I do not like quality control. I don't like doing all of that. And I was like, you know what? I need to change the structure of my business. And that's when I started creating more on-demand courses, more mentoring, more coaching, more training, and doing the things I really love, right? So definitely there's not a one size fits all when you're trying to figure out how do I grow my business. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to hire 20 people on staff and then think about payroll. There are different ways to do that, right? So what are some ways really strategically then that you knew like throughout your business, I need to grow, so I need to do this in a way that makes me feel good, right? As far as like, I don't want to manage a bunch of people, but how do I actually grow then without hiring a bunch of people?
So I think, everybody's in a different place when it comes to starting a business. Some people have lots of resources at their disposal. Some people do not need a certain amount of revenue. Some people are doing it in retirement and it's sort of their passion. And then other people are in a place where I have to make at least this much every month and I need to be making more eventually. And those are wildly different places to be in your consulting business growth. And from what I've learned from the people that have been in my boot camp is the people who are in a place where they have to make a certain amount of money at least, they typically take the work that comes to them and do it until they're in a place where they have enough money that they can say, I don't want to do this thing anymore. Right. And now I want to focus on these other things that then they have time to cultivate, they have time to develop, they have time to create a product or a service that they can sell. Most of the time, I don't meet a lot of people who are in a place where they have to make a certain amount of money that have the expendable dollars for all the development work. of my website's great, and I've grown a big list, and I've taken the time to create all these products and marketing, and and they're in a place where they can sell stuff or automatically create passive income or have 100 people on every webinar they teach, and it always mystifies me when I talk to people who are like, but I just want to do coaching. Well, I get that, but guess what? Most of us didn't start off coaching.
Yep.
You have to have some experience to be able to share it with other people. And I have 20 years of experience, actually 30 something years of experience in development, right? And 20 something years charging people for services.
Yeah.
So now I'm at a place where it makes sense that I can charge people for coaching and consulting and have boot camps and that type of stuff. And I've told people this before, I could have done this 10 years ago. The lessons I've learned in the past 15 years are the reason I'm able to, right? I learned a lot of stuff the hard way. And because I didn't have the expendable resources and the money just sitting in a bank to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna pay somebody to do that. I had to learn how to do most of the stuff myself. And then I could appreciate when someone else was able to do it. And then I also could manage them better and ask more intelligent questions because I knew what the processes were supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I always encourage people like, yeah, you might be doing stuff you don't want to do forever, but sometimes that's sort of, what do they call it? Like paying your dues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody can't just go from $0 to $300 an hour.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be nice, but that's not real reality because you have no experience to share with that. And so part of it was learning the hard way, and part of it was just meeting people in the field. Back when did you start your business?
I started in 2014 is when I started my business. But I've been in the grant writing field for almost 20 years. So yeah.
You started even well after me. So it was probably a lot more resources online available to you. When I started back in the early 2000s, there weren't a million networking groups. There weren't Facebook pages. There weren't LinkedIn. I don't even know if it existed at that point. And so finding people who did what we do to have support, build friendships, have connections to call and ask questions, it really didn't exist for me. And there were business people, but they weren't business people that did what I did. They weren't in the nonprofit world. And so for a lot of us that are my age and older, like I'm 45, for a lot of us in my age group that started our businesses 20 years ago, we learned pulling up our bootstraps because there was another way to do it. And, when you wanted to get an educational seminar, you had to pay to go to a conference and take time off work and pay for hotels and all that stuff. Yeah, webinars didn't really exist then. I don't even remember when webinars came about, but I think I was out of the workforce before they really became a thing. I mean, I was out of the workforce full time. Like I wasn't even working for clients in 2014 when you started your business. And I don't even think, I don't remember ever going to a webinar when I was working for somebody else. So, the world today is very different. And I have to keep that in mind when I share with people, because now it is so much easier to find support. It's so much easier to find people who are peers, who have been where you are. And that's why you and I have so many free webinars and such great free content. I'm like, I created this. Why would I not share it with people? Yes, there's things we charge for, but there's a lot of great free content. Our YouTube channels, your podcast, our webinars. Conference isn't free, but let me tell you, if you're getting 10 hours of consulting support that's not pitchy, it's way less than what we're charging for the conference.
And you don't have to physically pay for a ticket and all of that. So yeah, I mean, that's huge savings that you can do from the convenience of your home, right? So right. Even in 2014, the world was different. I think the pandemic really created a huge trajectory of people getting online more and more. And I really saw a difference even between 2020 and 2022, as far as that happening. But yeah, it's interesting to be like, wow, because, back in the early 2000s, you would see like blogs online, banners for ads, right? Like there was, you said like Facebook, when did that even kick off? Like 2006, something like that. So yeah, it was.
I don't even remember. I don't think I had a Facebook page when it first came out. I mean, I remember MySpace. That's been a minute ago.
Yeah, MySpace was back then. And that wasn't for like business networking. That was straight up social media back in the day. Right? The social.
It was basically BNI networking groups and chambers of commerce and those kinds of things are the way that people networked back in the day. So, I just think it's so much more accessible for people to
Yeah.
start and grow a business these days. There's so many incubator programs, small business centers around the country, small business development centers. There's lots of not grants per se, but competitions like sort of like Shark Tank around the country. People have them everywhere. People can find dollars to help start and grow their business. And there are a lot of certifications for minority owned businesses. And I just think that the resources today are magnified. And I think if you know the connections to talk to and you're introduced to people, that you can really just do a lot more with your business these days a lot quicker.
I love that. And yeah, and I mean, the nonprofit consulting conference is a great example because sure, there's a lot of things out there for entrepreneurs. I would even say consultants, it's pretty limited, but entrepreneur in general, there's a lot. But consultants, and specifically nonprofit consultants, people who work with nonprofits, very different ballgame. Nonprofits are different than for-profit businesses, right? And how they operate. Like you were talking about, there's a lot of job security there because of the consistent churn with nonprofits that is very different than for-profit. So it is a different type of ecosystem to work within. And there's a lot of great benefits and there's a lot of great meaning too in the work. But as far as like, okay, so let's get back to this know when to grow, right? And as we're kind of going through, like, do you kind of advocate for a certain amount of money in the bank or a certain number of clients, or kind of like, what is your thought process of just like, okay, I'm ready to do something else. Am I really ready?
Well, I don't advocate for a certain amount of money in the bank because when I first started, I literally had $8,000 in the bank. And that's because my brother loaned me $8,000 to start my business because I left my job unexpectedly. Like I knew I was leaving, but I ended up leaving sooner than expected. And so I think if you are structured and you have a plan and you plant seeds and you have been planting seeds, that if you are diligent, you can be successful in a business. I started out very small and I figured out how much do I have to make every month. And I broke that down to the days. And I said, I have to make $100 a day to pay my bills and do everything I absolutely have to do. No money left over. Just that's what I have to do. And that's what I set my sights on. And, it took me a couple of years to get to the point where that wasn't the case, but I planted enough seeds. I'm literally still reaping the benefits of people's relationships that I met 5-7 years ago. People will come up to me and be like, I heard you speak at this conference and blah, blah, blah. And my organization would like to book you for whatever. And I'm like, wow, So I think if you're diligent and you do want to do this for a living, there's definitely a path, and it doesn't matter how much you have to start with in the bank, as long as you can pay your bills for a couple months as you start to build that. But you can't, like, in my opinion, and I think everybody's got an opinion, I think it's very hard to just quit your job without a plan in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, but I want to do it. And I'm like, I worked my business for 2.5 years behind the scenes, every night when I got home, every day during my lunch break, and every weekend, till I got to the point that I had people that I was onboarding as I quit my full-time job, that I had people who were wanting to work with me, and I had services I could sell. And it was a lot, and I always tell people this: I didn't have kids. I wasn't married at the time. I just bought a house for the first time in 2013. So I really didn't even have stuff I had to maintain before that. I mean, I had a rental house, but it wasn't like I was responsible for stuff.
Right.
And so that is a wildly different place than a lot of people are in.
Yeah.
People ask me, how did you do X, Y, or Z? And I encourage them to remember, you have kids or you have school or you have whatever. And it was wildly different. I had all the time in the world that I wanted to commit to it. If I wanted to go to bed at 1 o'clock every day, I could,
Yeah.
And so I want people to know, I think it's possible, but I also want people to know that I don't feel like my situation is everybody's situation. And I don't want people to be like, we're just going to do what she did and we're going to be as successful as she is as quickly.
Right.
So
I appreciate that. I appreciate that because everybody's experiences are completely different, especially when it comes to a business. Like I was a single mom when I started my business, right? So completely different situation, right? And my risk aversion was probably extremely different than yours, right? But then it also brings in my personality too. I'm also kind of, I am not very risk averse sometimes. I'm like, let's go for it because it's my personality. So you got to, looking at all of those different things, right? To really understand who you are as a person and how you can roll a business. But I really believe that having a business is is some sort of security that just isn't offered in a regular job, right? Because even if there's a lot of risk to it, it's always something in your back pocket, right? It's always something that, as long as you have an idea, you can make money, right? Like you can connect. So I really think that, understanding that and understanding, right, and being aware of where you are in your situation. So I love that. And then having that plan. So definitely figuring out, okay, one thing I really like to do this last year, I was looking at the last couple of years I've been doing this, of course, is tracking all of my time for all of the things I do, all the marketing time, right? And then seeing what brings in the most money year over year compared to how much my time went into it. And then I'm able to make decisions year over year to say, what am I going to focus on this year, with data. So I'm thinking about like, track your data. Like that's your,
No, I agree completely. It amazes me the people that I talk to, and I ask them, they'll say, how much do you think I should charge for this thing? And I'm like, well, how much time does it take you to do it? And they literally have no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you not know how long it takes you to do something for clients that you're doing on a regular basis? Well, I just never really thought about it. Well, can't really figure out a price until you know how much of your time it takes. So, we have a whole session we talk about. That was part of last year's conference, was how do you figure out your pricing? And a big piece of that is knowing how long it takes you to do the stuff you're doing. So I think it's possible to evaluate what you're doing and figure out not only how long it takes you to do it, but what you like. And, like Marie and I right now, you were asking me about how we knew and how we could grow. We've been evaluating our strategic planning processes. And right now we're streamlining them for the third time in 4 years, because we realize there are more efficient ways to do some of the things like scheduling and emails that are going to be consistent across the board, that we just have to change like names or a few details or something. We have somebody who's doing all of our strategic planning template preparation. So there's a template, but then we have to go in and like fill in certain things in every template for specific clients. Well, there's an intake form they send us that has all that information. So I'm like, why can't I outsource that? So like I have one of my VAs go in and create that every time we have a new client. That's time I don't have to do it. And so we've like spent time just looking at what can we streamline that Marie and I aren't specifically doing that allows us to do more work with the specific clients, so we can have more strategic planning clients. And we wouldn't have needed to do that 4 years ago because we didn't have enough clients coming in that it was like, if we don't have more time, we can't take any more clients. And that's where we are now. And so that, that's been another big conversation. It's like, we can streamline it to a point, but there will come a time, probably middle of next year, where we will say, this is our capacity for serving strategic. We're already booking clients into 2024 for strategic planning.
Nice.
And that's a great place to be, but it also means you either have to go up on your prices because there's a demand for your services, or you just acknowledge, this is how many clients we take a year. And one of the things we put into place for our own family sanities was, we don't travel off of the East Coast after September 1st.
Oh, nice.
So if we're going to do any travel for strategic planning anywhere else in the country, it has to happen between January 1st and August 30th. And all of our clients know that. We very well marketed at this point. And so it allows us to spend more time with our families during the part of the year we like the most. And it gives us an assured 4 months here.
Because you're on the East Coast. So, and I think that's so, I love how you've involved like your family into that too, and your life, because it's also a part of your business, like it is when you're an entrepreneur. But as far as what I really love too is knowing when to grow. It's like, okay, when things start to get a little bit like, okay, this is starting to grow, how do I streamline? So I love that question. How do I automate, right? So all of a sudden, that could be hiring someone. It could just be creating more efficient systems, right? There's other ways. You don't always have to hire. You don't always have to spend money. But when you do those things, what it does is you're basically asking, how do I allow more time? Because having more time then allows you to think about growth, to think about strategic growth. And if you don't have that time to think, you can't really grow, right? So I love that. The step before even knowing when to grow is, okay, how do we create more time, right? So I think that's a really good point. And also, I just want to congratulate you on your business too. I mean, you guys are just thriving and really, being able to just get more and more specific year over year on what you're wanting to do. So I love that so much. And you're also going to be,
And
yeah, oh, you got a puppy.
Jack's like, Mom, it's after 5 East Coast time. You're not supposed to be at your desk. Hey, handsomest boy.
I
Hey,
love it.
how
He's
is-
so cute.
And then you go play with Dad.
Also then, you have a couple of sessions that you're teaching. I can't wait at the Nonprofit Consulting Conference. And we're talking about how to grow an email list. So you're also talking, you're talking about how to grow there as well. So did you just want to talk about that real quick before we close up today?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I spent an entire year of my business dedicated to growing my email list for a lot of reasons. I was working on being able to make passive income that would pay certain bills, right? And in order to do that, I had to have a list. And my list was 3,500 for years and years and years. And so in the year that I spent focusing on that only, I put a lot of systems in place, and I talked with a lot of people, and I did a lot of things I'd never done before. And I had some dollars to invest in that, right? So it was year 6 in my business full time. It wasn't like at the very beginning. And my email list grew to over 30,000. And it really took me to where I wanted to be, right? I mean, I think everybody's like, I want more passive income, of course. But it really got me to the place where we regularly had the attendance at webinars we wanted. We were reaching the right audience, and we were learning more about the content they wanted. So it allowed us to really hone in on where we were spending our time creatively to say, here's a resource you need, here's a template you need, here's a webinar that is helpful to you. And so we're going to talk about what systems and different things need to really be in place to grow that list. And I'm really going to talk from my experiences and how I did it. I'm not going to pitch any systems because I didn't really have a system per se, but I'm going to tell you what I did and how it got me there.
I love that. I'm so excited about that too, because that's such a great list growth story, right? And I can't wait to hear more about it and just your strategies, because that is, a lot of people feel like, okay, as soon as I put a free worksheet or a webinar out online, I'm going to have like thousands of people sign up. And I'm like, oh, it takes work. It takes work to grow that list.
I didn't even know what a lead magnet was for so long. I didn't even know that when I did free webinars for people, like I was teaching for Bloomerang and Candid and Grant Station and Found and all these places for years. And I did not know that I should have had a lead magnet in all my webinars. And I didn't. I was just like, oh, I'd love to partner. Oh, I'm so excited. And I was so clueless. And once I learned that was a thing, I would be like, hey, do you mind if I put like a poll in to see if people would like for me to send this thing to them? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm like, oh my God, I could have gotten there so much quicker. But I didn't know. I didn't know it at all. So I learned a lot at last year's conference because I didn't know about podcasting, like that you should have a link for people to do with podcasting too. And I'm like, oh my God, there's just so many opportunities that I didn't access. So, I'm perfectly happy to admit that I did learn things the very hard way.
But what amazing stories. I can't wait to hear it. So if you guys want to also hear that story and get those strategies, definitely sign up for the Nonprofit Consulting Conference happening in August 23rd and 24th. And that's presented by Founded Technologies. And we also have amazing speakers. We have Grant Easy Management Software, Brains and Brawn, Essential Bookkeeping Solutions, and Bloomerang. So we just want to give a shout out to all of you guys that are supporting the work in the nonprofit consulting space. And yeah, Mandy, where can people find you? So if they want to hear more and find out more and get on that list.
Yeah, fundingforgood.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. I can't wait to be at the Nonprofit Consulting Conference with you this year. And we'll definitely have you back on the podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.